This book, written by the Prince of Wales on the future of food, inspired me to create this documentary. I hope that it will influence you guys to maybe change the decisions that you make in your life about food. A quote from the Black Panthers 10-point program, number 5. We want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. Education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present-day society. This relates to my project because I believe there's a significant lack of knowledge about the corruption in our food industry. Dietary patterns in the United States are associated with increased risk of several chronic diseases, such as coronary heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, hypertension, overweight, and osteoporosis. Many processed foods have been engineered to be so incredibly rewarding to the brain that they overpower anything we might have come across in nature. The truth is, processed foods are so incredibly rewarding to our brains that they affect our thoughts and behavior, making us eat more and more until eventually we become sick. Over 1 billion people are hungry, and on the reverse side of the coin, over 1 billion people in the world are now considered overweight or obese. It is an increasingly insane picture. I came to the conclusion that it seems that there's a significant lack of knowledge about this controversial topic in food, and yet no one seems to address it because it is not an immediate stressor in their life.
You know, everything is instant gratification. Can't really explain the definition of organic, but my grandparents and great-grandparents, they grew up in the South, and they was farmers, you see what I'm saying? And pretty much farmers, that they took care and they nursed their own food, vegetables, potatoes, grains,
Right.
of that nature. And see, organics, what I see, pretty much does the same thing. So, as far as the relationship between organic food and the importance of it, the nutrition, I believe.
I don't think that we can have balanced bodies if we're putting things in our body that we don't know what they are.
I've always thought that foods that are naturally grown are obviously the best for you. It seems to me that when you start screwing around with nature, you got some problems potentially.
It's a way of getting rid of the impact of capitalism. I think often we see in examples like food desert that citizens are getting bogged down by big agriculture.
I think it's absolutely important that we eat organic. It's the most nutrient-rich food.
At my house, we eat solely organic, and personally, I try to eat as organic as possible. Sometimes it's hard when I'm out and I'm not at home, but I try to eat as organic as possible. I think it's important because first and foremost, if something is organic, it's not genetically modified. Thus, I don't have any weird chemicals in my body. I don't have any pesticide residue on there. I know what I'm getting and I know that it's good, and I'm supporting the right type of food that this environment and this earth needs right now.
The reason it's important to eat and support organic food is that right now and for the last several decades, probably since the late 30s, the government has been supporting industrial farming, but specifically crops that don't really contribute to our nutrition. So soy and corn mostly, and the soy and corn right now is predominantly GMO, almost 99% of it. There's a big disadvantage for people who want to eat healthy and want to eat produce and want to eat organically is that it's more expensive, and one of the reasons it's more expensive is that the other stuff is subsidized. There's a large environment of consumers who want their product. So it's very important to eat organically, and I really believe in local. I think that we need to decentralize not just energy, but we need to decentralize food from a safety standpoint.
Organic food generally is more healthy, so organic farmers tend to take better care of the soil, which means that the organic food is going to have more vitamins and more minerals in it. Organic food is also more nutritious in terms of what it doesn't include. So organic food does not include pesticides and herbicides, so What does the word side mean? It means to kill. Where do people think all of those things are going? They're in our soil, they're in our water supply. And all of the disease that is around now has to have come from somewhere. And I think a big part of that is probably herbicides and pesticides. So while, this much might kill an insect, does it kill us over time by accumulations?
In the economic sense, industrial byproducts that aren't reflected in the price we pay for groceries, like pollution, topsoil erosion, and obesity, you just can't solve one problem and create others down the road. This way of food production is destructive of everything it depends on. It simply can't last.
GMO? I don't know GMO.
GMO stands for genetically modified organisms. There's multiple companies, one of those being Monsanto. They're like the main producer.
I'm not sure whether or not they're demonstrably any worse than non-GMO.
Well, I don't know too much about them, but they do scare me a little bit. I know that I think in some European countries have banned them.
Actually, I think GMO foods are a good thing. I think overall they do provide a lot of food for people who otherwise wouldn't have any.
You get better food, or it's supposed to be more pesticide resistant, and at the same time, I guess it's just unnatural to alter genes of food.
I think that genetically engineered food is not really the way that, it's not the things we actually should be eating.
Totally against them. I think they're horrible for the planet. Very destructive.
I am against GMOs. I can see the pro-GMOs point of view, but I just think the environmental and health impacts that they have are worse, and they don't balance those good qualities out. They are degrading our environment and they're degrading our health system. Our government's not stopping it, and I think it's kind of corrupt and we need to fix it.
Anything that has to be genetically modified, they have to take stuff out to be able to put more stuff back in. Research has really shown us that, is it harmful right now? Well, a lot of people are saying yes, a lot of people are saying no. I just don't think it's worth it.
I think that there's so much we don't know about genetically altered foods. Anything that we're eating should be labeled.
One thing I want to make really clear, because people can't seem to wrap their head around it, there's a big difference between natural selection and genetically modifying. So when you hear scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson saying, we've been genetically modifying for thousands of years, no we haven't. There's a complete difference between choosing what crops are the healthiest and crossbreeding them to your ideal crop, and splicing genes from different organisms together, creating DNA sequences that you have no idea what their implications are. In theory, GMOs are great, right? We can use less water, we can have crops that don't normally have vitamins and nutrients have vitamins in there. We can have crops in half the size as regular and grow 3 times the amount. But that's in theory. In reality,
GMOs are bullshit.
GMOs have to be patented. They're not, while they might be something that's living, that's growing out of the ground, they have to be patented. They cannot just grow wild. So you look up the GMO patents, and all it is for increased pesticide resistance. You are going to love it because look, it's helping us yield more, it's killing off the insects. That's not what it's doing. We don't know what the implications are. Many countries have mandatory labeling, but some have flat right
ban GMOs.
They have done a lot of animal studies on genetically modified foods. If you do a study with rats and you put a genetically modified food and you put a different food, they'll always go for the natural food. They won't go for the genetically modified food. Unfortunately, it hasn't been well studied because the people that produce the genetically modified seed really want to squash this down. There's a lot of money behind keeping genetically modified foods out there.
Problems with Monsanto and GMOs today is that they have such a large share in our food industry and produce such a large amount of our food, yet they're not required by law to label the GMOs. So you can be buying food that are genetically modified and the consumer doesn't know it.
So GMOs came into our food supply in late 90s, about 97, 98, mostly in soy and corn. We have seen a lot of diseases skyrocket, specifically when we introduced GMOs into our food chain. We have studies. Cirolini's is the famous study, but it's not just Cirolini. Other people have done very similar studies where they've looked at mice fed the GMO, and what we've seen is tumor growth. It's very consistent tumor growth. the BT toxin, which is what the corn, one of the GMO species is, it is designed to damage the GI tract of insects. And it was said that it didn't affect humans because it works through a pathway called the shipmate pathway, and that we don't have that pathway. But it turns out that all the beneficial bacteria that we have in our bowel use that pathway. We're damaging the beneficial flora in our bowel, which is incredibly important for digestion, vitamin production, neurological health, immune health, immunity. The list goes on and on.
A few years ago, there were 16 countries that had total or partial bans on GMOs. Now there are at least 26, including countries like Switzerland, Australia, France, India, Germany, Mexico, Italy, Poland, Russia, and that's only to name a few. I think it's time for us to ask ourselves the question, why haven't we banned GMOs in the United States? By passing laws that require the labeling of GMOs, the consumer will have access to more information about what is in their food and how exactly it impacts their health. Going back to the Black Panther quote, I think one of the most valuable things we can do as a society is educate the people around us.
A really great thing the government could do would be to subsidize organic food, and I think that would make a big improvement.
If everybody started buying organic and local, then the price would come down because the supply, there'd be such a huge demand for it, so it would be easier to supply it. It would make it easier on the farmer knowing that there's people who, there's a larger environment of consumers who want their product.
What's gone wrong in our food system can be reversed. A better way of doing things is still possible. The next generation could be fitter, healthier, wiser, and more compassionate than the last one. That is the basic message of the Prince's speech.